everyone. Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting. In another episode of the Indie Show. Tonight we are talking Locke Key Volume 1. Welcome to Lovecraft. And I got an awesome panel with me tonight, including a first timer on my channel, I believe. We got Mike from Downright Nerdy Podcast. If I can find the mouse to click on him. What's going on, man?
What's up, buddy? I appreciate you inviting me on. I'm really happy to be here.
I am glad that you were willing to join me for this. Now, you have not read this before either, so...
No, first time. First time for a lot of things today.
Yeah, so looking forward to this. And then I got a couple people who have joined me for some other stuff. I got this guy, some you guys may have heard of, this Comic Man Andy guy. Hey, what's going on, Andy?
What is up, everybody? JP, thanks for having me, man. Mike, it is amazing to be back live with you, man.
I'm not going to lie, man. Seeing your beards, both of you guys, it just makes me jealous and happy all at the same time.
Mine comes and goes, so I'm not as dedicated as Andy. So.
She said.
And then last but not least, we got Tacoma Comics. What's going on, my friend?
Hey, not much, man. I'm happy to be here. You know, before I fell in love with Die, which I'm also doing with you, Locke Key, hands down, my favorite comic, still right up there in the top 5. I just think there's not a better written, tight, concise story. So I'm super excited to talk about it with y'all.
Nice. So yeah, I believe you are the only one on this panel that had read this before us rereading it for this, correct?
I guess so.
Yeah. So that is cool. So I'll be interested to see how many times have you read through it before, Tacoma?
Probably like 3 or 4 all the way through.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to discussing this. Let's shout out a few people in the chat, and then we will get into this. We got Unruly Simeon Tailgating, who was the person that put me up to reading this, said I had to add this to the list. We got Bear Island Comics. What's going on, Bear?
Adam.
We got the Bearded Comic Bro. What's going on, Greg? So, yeah, I'm the guy hanging out in the chat. So first off, I just like to get initial impressions before we dig into it deep, particularly from the people who haven't read it before. So we're going to start with Mike. What did you think of this first volume? You never read this before. What were your first thoughts having read this now? There
were definitely some surprising let me rewind real quick. Let me talk about my expectations prior to reading it. I thought that it was going to be something similar to I guess like a horror-y mixture of like a haunted house kind of thing with what's that one movie where they go through the closet and it opens up into this whole other reality? Narnia. Yeah, I thought it was going to be something like that. I had zero knowledge of what this was. I hadn't seen the show. I didn't plan. I won't plan on doing it until after I read it. But after reading the first volume, found out I was completely wrong, and I was happy for it. It was a pretty fun read. Definitely got me intrigued, and it'll have me reaching for volume 2 for sure. Yeah. Andy, what about you? What were your initial thoughts on this one?
I went into this with zero expectations. I did not read the book. I've never given the book the time of day. When the Netflix trailer dropped for the show, my first feelings of the trailer were this is not something I'm going to be interested in at all. So it's going to be interesting in talking about this tonight.
Okay. Tacoma, can you think back? What was your original, when you first read this first volume, what was your original thought?
It's hard because I started while it was still coming out in single issues. So I didn't start with this first volume. This is right when I got back into comics, and something about the artwork on a few of the covers like grabbed me. And so I said, okay, I'm going to pick that up. So I don't quite remember going back. I just think there's some storytelling done through the artwork right off the bat that is just amazing. And I know we're going to get into it, but the initial attack and the funeral home scenes, I think, are just played so beautifully in the beginning. It really, really grabbed me.
Nice. So for me, I'm a lot like Mike. I don't know what I really expected. I don't know that I had expectations. This was not what I was expecting necessarily. I guess I would, and it is kind of a horror comic for sure, but I guess I was expecting, I don't know, something different than this. I am super intrigued I just like I'm super intrigued to see where this is going. This was not what I was thinking it was going to be. I really enjoyed it. I will say these are not horror comics, or not something that's usually like things that I necessarily seek out. I'm not a big horror movie or any of that kind of thing person. But I do like suspense done really well. And I feel like this is a lot of what this is, more so than horror. So yeah, I am really interested to see what everybody else's thoughts are, but I definitely like enjoyed this volume a lot more than I necessarily expected. So for sure. So let's get into it. Is there anywhere any one of you wants to start, or do we just want to start kind of here at the beginning of where Tacoma talked about kind of the layout of this what was the first issue, where we kind of know what happens, but we don't, as we're getting the flashbacks from.
Before that, like, I think we should mention Joe Hill is Stephen King's son.
Yes.
So when you're talking about New England horror, you're talking about somebody who, I give him lots of credit. He did it on his own, right? He didn't take his dad's last name, but he is well versed and steeped in how to make like Maine and Massachusetts and New Hampshire work in a horror setting. So I just thought that was something we should throw out there.
Yeah. So Joe Hill, Gabriel Rodriguez did this, and yeah, like I did not know like it was a long time before I knew Joe Hill was Stephen King's son, because I'd seen several of the things that he'd written and that kind of stuff, and I know he's a horror writer, and I was like, oh, so you definitely respect the fact that he's not using Joe King and trying to trade on his dad's name.
That alone, Joe King is that alone right there is enough to find a different path.
This is true. This is true.
Couldn't help yourself, Andy, could you?
Nope.
Only Andy goes straight for the dad joke, you know. So Andy, I'm curious because I'm not sure where you fall on this for sure. So what did you think of this opening sequence where we're getting the funeral home and the backstory of what's happened to this? All of this is really told. Interestingly enough, I feel like this issue was really told through Ty, whereas I feel like most of this volume is told through the younger brother, but this is very much Ty initially in the first issue. What'd you think about this?
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I baited you guys quite heavily with my opening statement. This is flashbacks done to perfection. This is done extremely well, in my opinion. I wish I would have picked this up a long time ago. I think you're right with the story being very Ty heavy at the beginning here, and kind of like that football player, sports popular kid in school who has just hit rock bottom in his life and things aren't going well and doesn't want to be where he is, and it leads into the situation that does. I mean, the death of his father and the flashbacks mixed in makes for perfect storytelling. This could have been over in 3 pages. Instead, we get a third of the volume for this, and it's done very eloquently. And I think Tacoma's dead on with how much storytelling, or the ability of the art to do a particular amount of storytelling in there as well. And this is you guys have me hook, line, and sinker on this.
Nice. Yeah, I thought this is, like I said, it wasn't what I was expecting, and it was really well done because they give you like the initial. I mean, you realize these guys are, when they knock on the door, because you see right off the bat the back of their truck, so they're hiding it, and you see what they got behind their backs, and I love how before you even get to, you see what's the ambush on his dad, but then they go right to the funeral stuff. I love the panels where he's at the funeral, like or not even the funeral, but at the kind of the wake at home, like, because it's flashing, like each panel is like the wake to like stuff going on that he's remembering, and like sitting there and listening to his parents and stuff. And I just thought those panels were spectacular. What did you think of this, Mike?
So Yeah, I mean, going to those panels and also touching on Joe Hill talking about, or Joe Hill being Stephen King's son. Stephen King had a knack for character development, and you definitely see a lot of it here. I mean, if you look at that wake panel, that lasts for 5 pages, where he's just sitting on the bench, and these people keep coming in, coming out, coming in, coming out, and I mean it. He really nails it home what this guy is feeling, right?
Yeah.
And it just sets the tone for the rest of the rest of the of his first issue, right? It's just very well written. Tacoma, I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah, I mean, am I unmuted? Okay. So yeah, I mean, like it's just this idea, right, of the loneliness. He's sitting on one side as the people come in, he's sitting on one side, and all these people that come to say hi are people that he'd referenced in the earlier pages when he was talking with his brother and sister at the summer house, and none of them relate to him, right? And so it's like, I'm alone, I'm a lonely teenager, but it's not normal teenage angst because I also have at the funeral of my dad, and the kid who killed him reminded me that I said at one point, I wish my dad was dead. So it's like they're really just using that artwork to narrow it in. I mean, you talk about rules of thirds. You've got the cousins in the middle, he's on one side, everybody else on the other. And even his uncle Duncan, who comes and sits next to him, who sort of relates, still doesn't quite like connect with him. So we get that Ty is alone. Ty feels guilty, and it's so beautifully set up. But I tell you, I don't think I've ever looked at this before. There's two people in the back of the truck.
Yeah.
They don't even mention who that woman is, right?
They're talking about his uncle that they came to visit.
Right. They went to his uncle's house who was near there.
Yeah, and they don't even mention they do not mention.
Right. It's just, here's an extra dead person. I don't think I've ever really looked closely at that.
Well, I mean, also, I mean, just going back to this wake portion, me being a huge horror fan, any horror story worth telling is only worthwhile if you care about the characters and get to know the characters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's true with every story, but especially with horror, because you're expecting to see people dying and things like that. And if you're going to have someone dying, you have to care about it to actually give it an impact to whoever's consuming that material. And this, I mean, automatically, like if this character ends up dying later on, or have something else, or see his arc kind of move forward. Tacoma, don't spoil it, please. It's going to make more of an impact because of just these 5 pages alone.
Yeah. Well, and and this whole like sequence, the flashback to what happens, and his conversation with his brother and sister, and how he just wanted to be anywhere else, and then as Tacoma says, you see then in the wake those people he would rather have been spending time with, trying to have a conversation with him, and he's just like, like these people don't get it or care, and he's not really connecting with them at all, and those were the people he was like more interested in than spending time with his family, and now he wants nothing to do with that. It's just really, I thought it was really well done to set these kids up. I love, like, as we go a little deeper, like once I love this panel where they kind of like are hiding on the roof.
It's so well done, that one shot.
Like their faces, and it's just really well done. I want to talk a little bit about
real quick, JP, if you don't mind me just jumping in real quick. Just a couple pages before that, when the dude shoots the dad, right?
Yeah.
And then the other bald guy is saying like, "What the heck is that?" Right? If you see those, I think it's page 18.
Yeah.
If you can see like the room that he's in, there's a woman's shoe on the bed. He's holding his pants. Like you could see the impact of or like what he did to the mom, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So obviously the mom is also going to be a character that's gone through not only losing a husband due to murder, but also being raped, right? So it's just an added added point for that character.
There's a lot of
see forward.
there's a lot of subtle nuances here. From the memorial service, even I've lived that, right? I've lost my father in my young adult stage of life, and there's a lot of nuances here that you can tell that there's studied and researched, because you really regress into yourself when you deal with something like that. And it's not that he doesn't want to cope with those people; it's that you don't know how to cope through something like this. So there's an aspect of PTSD from that standpoint, and also the rest of the family, especially like Mike had mentioned, the rape of his mother, and how that impacted everything too. This family's just been absolutely ravaged.
I mean, that brings, I mean, that gives the entire family a great excuse to move away, right, and start a new life back at this old house, right?
Yeah.
And
Because they all have to
They
get
go
through
back
what
to
they
the
just went through
family.
together. Huh?
Yeah, the
Right,
family house.
the family home, and they show that scene where he's in the funeral parlor, but he's flashing back on hearing his parents talk when he was hiding outside of their bedroom. And it's funny how Ty looks like Bode there, kind of looks like his younger brother,
Yeah.
kind of eavesdropping and hearing that if anything ever happened, like that they'll just probably go live at Hill House because Hill, it's called Hill House, right? Or is it called Lovecraft? I think it's called Lovecraft.
Lovecraft.
And right away, HP Lovecraft, we're taking some horror liberties there. But so there's just like this great setup and this kind of movement towards that, just to get away from this awful setting, time, and place that they've been in, and hoping that they'll escape to somewhere better.
And it's actually the Key House is what it's referred to.
There you go.
Key House. So
yeah, Locke is the family
in
name.
Lovecraft, Massachusetts.
It's in Lovecraft, Massachusetts.
And Locke is the name. So
and Locke is the family name. Yeah. So
but
yeah, I just like there's just so much in this first right at the beginning where they're flashing to them the funeral and then them going across the country, and then you see like the resolution of how Ty kind of sets the trap for him, like by like going down to the basement and then him hiding in the basement where he can't, and like the fight. The artist, like I don't know that I know of anything else that Gabriel Rodriguez has done, but I think the art is really like, I wasn't sure I would like it at first. The faces are a little somewhat anime, maybe, like because of the big eyes and the, not really anime, but he definitely has a little bit of like the big eyes and a little bit of that kind of style. But it's also a very rough kind of look. But boy, it really grows on me as I go through this. What do you guys think about the art? Is just as a complete aside from the story, but I just
they never do. That. There's very few, if any, 9 panels per page. So I think that larger style works because as I'm skimming through this, we've got 3 panels, 4 panels, full page, 3 panels, 5 panels. Like it works to have that larger kind of roughly sketched out. And I think Gabriel Rodriguez does it so well, you get the impression of what they're trying to convey without an intense amount of detail.
Yeah.
I love the art. I mean, there's a couple of scenes later on. I think it's I can't remember, like in the early 20 pages ish, when they're in the basement, right? And Ty's kind of stalking their attacker, and the attacker's face is all black, right? Yeah, right there. So your right hand, the page right over there. Yep. I mean, you see a lot of great expression on his face, but on the killer's face, you just see just the eyes and then the shadow. I think it's very well done. I really enjoyed the art throughout the entire volume.
Yeah, and then you see kind of how it changes once Ty like knocks the gun away from him, and then Ty becomes kind of the aggressor, and it's his face that you can only like see. The eyes, and that he's the one in the dark.
Well, I mean, that's. I mean, I hate to say classic Stephen King, but like he's the guy. Like he had to become that bad that side to defeat that, right? He had to become it to defeat it.
Yeah. Now turn one page, JP, and that's like one of my favorite pages of all comic books.
The one where he's holding the brick in his hand.
No. One more where the mom comes back.
Oh, we see the mom.
That's stunning, and that's I think where it all comes together. You don't need kind of more detailed, like that tells it all right there. And they're announcing there's going to be violence here, there's going to be heroism, there's going to be the underdogs coming back. Like, get ready. If you're not ready for this, close it now, because this is what this comic will be about. Great storytelling, but we're not shying away from, like, people fighting for their lives here, and I just love that.
Well, yeah,
And
There's
we
a
get to-
great, there's a really good balance of storytelling through dialogue and storytelling through artwork here. You guys know there's so many comic books where there's too much of one and not enough of the other. And I think there's a really good balance with this novel.
I would agree with this, and I love how you see, Ty, he like beats up the one attacker with the brick. He grabs the gun. He's gonna willing to shoot this, and you see like this panel where he's looking at his like when they first get to the house, which is just a couple pages later, when he's looking at his reflection in the water, and he's seeing him bloody and holding the brick and the gun, even though this is, month later or whatever. And yeah, it's just, I will say, like I said, I wasn't sure I'd like it when I first opened the book. I was like, I don't know what I think about this art, but boy, it really, in so many cases, you get like the art fits the story, or it just seems to grow on me. And this is one where it definitely does.
It speaks volumes to the creative team here, where whether or not the artist took liberties to create some of these panels, or whether the writer asked and requested some things, either way, they teamed up together and delivered some aspects of this that were phenomenal, are phenomenal. How do you deliver a character coping with PTSD in a way that it can be impactful for people to understand? And this is how it's done. This sets the bar, in my opinion, in storytelling through art and through words, on how somebody copes with a post-traumatic stress disorder, in losing a father and the family just being crushed and turmoiled like that. Like, that same page, Tacoma and JP, where she takes an hatchet and uses it absolutely to perfection. That next page, the bottom 3 panels of that next page, where he's standing there and says, "Dad?" ? And then that is just goosebump worthy. Goosebump not in a great way, goosebump in an eerie, oh my god, I've been there, and this is painful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's, he's in the same position in all 3 panels, and it's one looking down at his dad after he's been murdered, one at the funeral, and then one looking at the pool. And it's that next page where we get that, him looking at the reflection. Well, 2 pages later, I guess, but after he's talked to his sister a little bit. But yeah, it's, I think it's just really well done. This opening, setting up what this family's been through and the trauma that they're dealing with. It's just like Andy and Tacoma said, it's just tremendous storytelling, and the art really helps carry it, because there's not a lot of words. There's no real exposition in this portion of the story at all. Yeah. I mean, it's all just.
Well, we haven't even gotten to the house yet. That's the crazy thing, right?
Yeah.
We haven't even gotten to the house.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the main part. I mean, they're there by this point, but you haven't, like, you don't know anything about the house yet. Although we're about to find out some interesting things. They don't waste any time once they're there for Bo to find the first key. Like, almost immediately. They're like, how much?
I love how he finds it too. He's just being a kid, just trying to reach for a sword, and then he sees not a shiny red ball, but a shiny thing on the top of the door, and he's like, screw the swords.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty epic to go from something so heavy, and the situation, the feeling, as dire and as heavy as it is, to a very playful, very whimsical kind of portion of the story, which is kind of masterful, in my opinion, where the pacing is on point. The pacing is kept, yet it changes the readers. It makes you optimistic at this point after delivering what it did.
Yeah, he sees, he's trying to get to the swords. He sees the key, something shiny, and he knocks over books and the swords and everything else. And it's just, he's being a kid. And I love the line right before we get this. It's Kinsey's like, it's only been 10 minutes. I think he can manage not to kill himself for 10 minutes. I think.
Yeah.
And you see the trouble that he's in.
But and there's a sense of life goes on coming up, like shit happened, we're going to school, right? Bode's going to draw a funky comic book we'll look out in a minute. That's his way of talking about it. He doesn't outwardly manifest the PTSD the way the other two siblings are. Ty's going to kind of have the toughest time dealing with it. He's getting moody and broody, and Kinsey's just kind of like, I'm going to join the track team and run, which is a metaphor in itself. I'm running. So like, it is
don't forget
whimsical, but
Mom,
it's
who just like goes into the bottle.
right. Well, I mean, but if you got to go back, like, to contrast that page we were all talking about, after the splash page, right above where Ty's looking at the three panels, she just is like, get out of here and take Bode and Kinsey and run to the Hutchinsons. Mom, go. Like, I'm in charge. Yeah, I'm going to deal with the after effects later, but right now I'm sober as hell. I killed this guy. You go where I say, you do what I say. And he's like, Dad, go. Mom's in charge. Mom's got it. Don't worry about Mom.
Yeah. So then we get our first flash here of the killer of Sam, that Ty didn't actually kill him, although he did like mess him up pretty good. Talking to something like that, either I don't know if you thought he was crazy at this point, but like a face in his sink. So what did you think when that happened? Because at this point we hadn't seen anything to indicate, there was anything supernatural going on here other than the funky key. Well, we don't even know what the funky key Bode found at that point was going to do. So what did you guys think about that little twist there at the start? Start with Andy this time.
I feel like it added a bit of depth or an extra layer to the onion, so to speak, where this wasn't going to be just a story about the turmoils of a family, but also potentially the turmoils of somebody else or something else, right?
Yeah. I do think it's a very interesting transition, and I'll let Mike and Tacoma chime in here, because up to that point, it has been very much a somewhat like the initial setup is this grounded kind of serial killer kind of thing, and this family trying to survive the trauma and moving across the country, and then like in 2 pages we go from something that seems very grounded to there's some weird face in the water and Bode is a ghost. And he goes to this door and like it's a so Mike, what did you think about that? Like the way
so just like you said, up to this point, we had no kind of inkling about anything supernatural. Although when you see the house, I don't know, for me, it kind of looked like a haunted house kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, this is probably going to go that way, but no evidence of that yet. So when he was like sitting in his cell talking to himself, I thought, okay, maybe they're going to go split personality disorder or anything. But then as soon as I turn the page and I see Bode turning into like a little spirit, I'm like, okay, so he's talking to somebody. I mean, whatever inkling I had before was washed away the next as soon as I turned the page.
Yeah, I don't know that I gave it as close a read the first time through, because it did seem okay. So now they're establishing he's crazy. Not that this echo that's living in the sink really exists and is also in the well house.
We don't know that yet.
The funny thing, I didn't even notice that I thought it was just his reflection.
Yeah, like you have to pay attention. I think with some of these things at first, until I realized what I had in my hands, I did skip over a few little keys there. No pun intended.
So and then we get the after we get Bode's little comic book story, which Tacoma mentioned earlier, which is just like that he writes for class, and his dad getting shot and moving across the country, and then he's talking about turning into a ghost. And needless to say, that gets him a note from his mom, a note from the teacher, like, oh.
So quick though, he turns into a ghost because he used the key that he found above the door on another door, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think he
And then from what I understand
he used
is
it on that door.
Yeah, I think it was that
Yeah.
door.
Got
Yeah.
it. So now I know we're kind of getting into the future of this a little bit. Does using a specific key have the same power on if you use it on any door, or does it have to be a specific door with that specific key?
So, like, obviously, I don't feel like they tell you for sure in this volume, like, but I feel like potentially some of the keys may only work on one door, and some keys may work on multiple doors. But I
know each key probably has a different power, so to speak.
Yeah.
I guess, right?
Do you want me to tell you or
No, don't tell me. Don't tell me.
I'm hearing questions,
I'm speculating.
We're doing a little speculation. So
Okay.
what do you think, Andy? We'll speculate a little more. Then
I think it depends entirely. I know when we get further into this volume, we get to a key called the Any key, which kind of leads into its own abilities, if you will. But I feel like it's kind of I feel like it's kind of situational. I feel like you've got keys that could be any keys or keys that have multiple roles and purposes. But I also feel like the first key, the lesser of keys, essentially this is our volley into this world of keys and what can be done with them. I feel like this is a lesser of keys and can only be used on that door for one purpose. One door and one purpose.
I think I think that's right. I think it's probably going to be very specific to the key, as opposed to like some keys are specific to a door and some are more general. And then obviously we get to the one of the two keys that we're going to get to in a minute, which is, Andy just mentioned, go anywhere. So kind of following this, they kind of start to settle in. Bo keeps becoming a ghost and spying on his family, and he keeps trying to tell them, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" But eventually, it leads him, as he's exploring around here, to hearing a voice in the well house. And so, what do you guys? Is there any? Well, I guess before we get there, was there anything in his little explorations that you guys wanted to talk about?
Who is the character that hangs out with Nina once they get to the house, almost like a family friend that helps them move?
That's Duncan. That's the brother.
That's Duncan.
Yeah, that's the kid's uncle, and that's her brother-in-law.
Okay, because that character's not even mentioned in the list of characters when you get further into the trade at the end with all the pictures. So
right.
Duncan, okay, that answers that question.
He was the one that was comforting Ty successfully comforting Ty at the funeral.
Right. He's the one that, and we do get, like, if you go back to that scene where Ty's remembering, he says they just go live in Key House with Duncan, safest place in the world for them. And she's like, safe from what? I don't know, whatever. The forces of darkness, reality TV. But then at some point, he also mentions, like, I don't remember, like, that the place so safe, why don't we live there now? And he's like, the house didn't choose me, it chose Duncan. So we do get like that little foreshadowing that there's more to the house even that early. So Duncan was the one of the brothers. He was the one chosen apparently by the house to be the caretaker or the one that stayed there. So so that is Uncle Duncan who's there, and he's, as we see throughout the story, he's trying to figure out how to deal with his nieces and nephews and his sister-in-law who's, drinking, and he's not very successful in trying to help them very much, despite his success at the funeral. But,
and that's the end of chapter 1, correct? Of the first issue.
Yeah, we spent half an hour on just the first of 6 chapters.
Yeah, right.
Just them settling into.
Well, I mean, it's super dense. I don't think the next few are going to be that dense, but I mean,
right. But
the main thing in chapter 2,
this is a great foundation.
Yeah, there's one thing to pay attention to here, and they kind of bring it up later on. But just before that chapter ends, like, well, over here, I just love, like, They say there's not a lot of those quiet times, and the very next panel is a quiet time, and they're looking away from each other because they can't really come to grips with what happened. But then on the next panel here, my lighting is terrible. He says there's a game that me and your brother used to play where we'd pretend that you could walk through the doors of the house and they were magic, and you could change stuff and go anywhere you wanted, like warriors or ghosts. So he has this sort of like recollection of it being a kid's game, and that becomes really relevant. I'm not giving anything away because it's in this book. It becomes really relevant later on.
But yeah, it talks about that adults don't remember.
Exactly.
Like once you become an adult, you don't remember the keys and what all they can actually do. So to a certain extent, you're wondering based on his comments whether or not, because Bode's the one kind of going through this, but he's also the only because the other two are teenagers. It's like, well, is this something that only little kids can experience? And we kind of get that at least to a point, others can go through this as we get through the story later. But obviously, Bode's doing the thing where he's turning into a ghost and spying on his family, and then he hears the voice in the well, and then he tries to get immediately to tell his brother and sister, and and they, of course, don't believe him. They didn't believe that he was turned into a ghost because, So what did you guys think about the little introduction to the well? And kind of because the second chapter is really Bode's issue. It's pretty much mostly told from his perspective. I guess you do get a little bit of Kinsey at the end of it, but and him going to explore this well.
You get a little bit of Kinsey at the very beginning and her not version, but how she's coping with PTSD as well.
Right. That's
one of the first.
Yeah. The hugging the pillow. Yeah.
It's like the second place he's transported is to his sister, and she's reliving that scenario. And they even go into depth that she squeezed her brother so hard. Is it Bode or Bodie?
Probably
I always said Bode, but I don't know.
She squeezed him so hard that she left bruises around his neck.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to describe that he's just doing due diligence to touch base on each character to build them through how they're processing this, to be honest, in my opinion.
Well, we even see and it's probably Bodhi because of the way it's spelled. I called him Bode when I was reading it in my head, but you're probably right. It's probably Bodhi. We even see him his nightmares, with his dad, and that wakes him up, and which actually prompts him to actually go see what's down the well, to use this ghost form and go down there. And we see this strange lady that I forget who was saying earlier before we started. I think Mike was saying before we started, kind of gave off a little Sandman death kind of vibes, that's down the well. And so he starts visiting her and talking to her. And eventually he brings her a mirror and scissors, and we get a different perspective of what it is he's been talking to when she looks in the mirror.
She's even cuter.
Yeah, even more attractive for sure.
Well, even beyond that is, she's the only one listening to Bodhi.
Yeah.
Right? Mom's like, "Oh, you were a ghost again today? That's nice, honey." Brothers and sisters like, "Don't do that," and don't believe him. But then he's like, "I hope you enjoy your cold showers, stupid head." Yeah. And he's like, "What the fuck?" So there's definitely an element of the only one who listened to the little kid is the bad evil demon going on here.
Right.
I'll bring you scissors and a mirror. How bad could that be?
Yeah, and we see in the next couple pages that we get confirmation at this point after you see her the first time. It's oh, that's who. For me, I immediately put together that's who.
Who was in the sink?
Yeah, that's who was in the sink for. Sam.
Do we know yet why they have a connection?
So what we see, and it's a little later in the story as we start getting some of Sam's backstory, is that when he was visiting with their dad with Rendell, in his office, there's the picture of the of the well
Yep.
house from
Yeah,
the
I
key
remember.
house, and she's in the image, and she
That's right.
sends him a message that says,
Forgot about
"Help
that.
me!" Like,
I forgot about that.
And
yeah,
that's where, like, suspense thriller is one thing. It's very hard for artwork to scare me, right? And
right,
if you're like quietly really reading this, you can get a little bit of like that tingling on your back when you see something like that. It's like when Michael Myers first
Yeah.
appeared between the sheets, like there's a few things that are not like violent, like but just like
yeah. That's just like creepy, and
yeah.
like, yeah, that he's seeing this, and then and that like he was always he comes across, and we don't get his backstory until after he kind of escapes, which is another just totally vicious scene
Uh-huh.
of what he does with the scissors to the guard. But like, he was kind of always a messed up kid. Wasn't really like had a kind of a bad, not a, like a bad family life. Kind of probably had some mental issues anyway, and then like clearly he's being preyed upon by this thing that like that needs him, and like nobody's ever needed him, and it's a lot of what's driving his story. And I think it is interesting, like the Joe Hill does a really good job, and you talk about this, like Stephen King is also, his dad's really good at this, of not just building character development of the characters that are dealing with the monster, but a lot of times he does a good job of explaining the bad guy and giving the motives, and like giving an understanding of why they would be doing this. So we kind of jumped ahead into a little bit of his backstory there, but what did you guys think of Sam's backstory and how they kind of set it up, of why he's doing what he's doing, why he's suddenly a killer and obsessed with getting to this house?
Well, I thought it was great because I mean, like, not only does he give a little bit of a backstory, but it gives you a little extra reason to kind of like root against him, because he becomes like an even eviler villain because he's also being used by this ghost person,
Yeah.
right? But it's yeah, it makes it more it makes it more scary. It does. And I mean, that's one of the brilliance that Stephen King always used to have, right, is with his characters, and not, I mean, both protagonists and antagonists, right? He's he's just something that Joe Hill definitely took from him, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, what makes it even more suspenseful and adds more layers is that he gets you to care about him at first, right? A mother that can't be bothered to take care of him and is doing her own thing, and she's going out for the night, and then you're going to your father's, and it's an abusive father that beats the living crap out of him, and is almost stereotypical for kind of like a movie or a TV show, but that's real life for some people. And
It's
incredibly
That's what,
unfortunate.
yeah, I mean, that's what makes it, because I mean, that it could be anybody. This the fact that this person could be anybody if you were put in those circumstances, right?
So
That's
this
what's the
is
terrifying part.
this is an individual that's crafted to where he is. Unfortunately, it's molded and shaped based on his experiences, and you feel very heartbroken that he is the way he is because of the life that he was given.
But you also see that he's got, like, even before his first interaction with this, creature in the well, or like you see him, like when he's getting picked on, he like bites the dude and tries to eat his arm. That like he's clearly got, like, he's disturbed, like
Yeah.
not just from his. I think his home life was bad, but I think he probably just had mental issues to start with, that the home life is just exacerbated, that haven't been treated. And then, yeah, this thing is basically preying on him, like using his weaknesses to get him to become this monster that we see, like, and this killer. Tacoma, what are your thoughts there?
I think it's really astute what both Mike and Andy said. Like, first of all, it is very stereotypical, right? Like, oh, your dad beats you, your mom doesn't care about you. She says you got to take care of the baby while she goes out. She won't take you where or help pay for college, even though you got the score on the SAT you wanted. And then the jocks pick on you in the gym, like it's the Breakfast Club. You know, we've seen that, but it's done so well with the artwork and is played to the perfect point for him to be outside Rendell Locke guidance counselor's door. Like it just works. You know, they're not reinventing a new stereotype here. They're playing one that we've seen before, but it somehow works really, really well. And yeah, there is a sense of empathy for him. Like, okay, this kid is effed up. He's going to act out, but he's hoping that the guidance counselor will help him. He's like, he's actually appreciative of what he's doing at first, and he wants to help Ty when Ty's dad yells at him. He feels sympathetic for Ty because his dad yelled at him. But that all gets twisted through like further things, and then through this mysterious creature in the well.
Yeah.
Just side note, just found an article that said Joe Hill pronounces it Bodhi.
Okay, there you go.
Then I shall too.
Yep. So I will read it that way going forward. So trying to think, like we kind of skipped over a little bit of stuff in the second issue of Kinsey at school trying to figure out how to fit in.
She gets rid of her dreads, right? And
she gets rid of her dreads, tries to look more normal.
Well, she doesn't want to, like before she always wanted to stand out, right? And now because she's been through so much, and now that she has this as her background coming to this new school, she just wants to fit it. She just wants to just blend in, go do her thing, and go home. Doesn't want to even make friends.
Yet.
And everybody's looking at her in school.
Yeah, and then we also meet during this. We meet the coach, the track coach, briefly, and the track coach notices her bracelet and asks if it's a key, which Kinsey's like, well, my dad used to call it that, or whatever. And then we see the track coach pull a book down and basically had went to school with her dad. So, and there's several.
I got a question. Is that the one that's up against a tree? That's like, if you're looking at that panel at the very bottom below, or
that one,
that person, is that the same person that's in the well?
Yep.
So,
I think so.
I think so. Like, I didn't think
very
that
similar
first,
characteristics.
but when we get to the end and we see, like, when we come back to the beginning of this, I'm pretty sure that is exactly the person that's in the well, or the thing that's in the well.
Yes.
And we'll get, they kind of explain that at the very end of this volume, but, and then meanwhile, but I feel like, because the coach ends up playing a role here toward the end also, that I have the feeling all the people in this picture, or most of them, are going to play some sort of role in how the rest of the story goes.
That photo reminded me so much of Sandman. Like when you first get to see all of his siblings, you know what I mean? And you're just kind of like, okay, so every one of these people is going to be important for some weird reason. Otherwise, why would they even put it in there?
Yeah.
They're doing a crossover with Sandman and Locke Key right now. So
this is part of the same universe.
It is now.
It wasn't when they originally wrote this.
But they are officially part of the same universe now. And Joe Hill has made no secret of the fact that he admires Sandman. It's like a masterwork.
No. So meanwhile, while we're getting his backstory, we're basically seeing Sam make his way across the country in a murder spree across the country to get to them and to Lovecraft, Massachusetts. And I love, like, the guy on the boat, like, who sees the bus burning, he's like, oh no, and then he's like right there, and he just like puts the gun to his head, like, oh, you're gonna take me to the island. Like, he's just so, like, I think the creepiest thing about him is it's clear that he has no compassion, no, like,
moral compass.
No moral compass. He doesn't feel bad about what remorse. He's doing. Yeah, he just like, it's just necessary.
Well, like, you conveniently skipped over the part where he essentially murders some truck driver's crotch, we'll say,
Yeah.
and as a favor to get a ride cross country, and then nonchalantly just kills the guy to take his money and like, yeah, I'm not going to do what you suggest, because let's be honest here. We're talking a high school kid in a situation that's pretty
Horrific.
hard to swallow, no pun intended.
What a way to go out, though, right?
And then essentially, I really was not intending that pun. Essentially,
you
the guy tells
Stop
him
it,
to
Andy.
be,
You had that lock loaded and ready to go. No
Yeah,
pun
you
intended.
totally did.
and essentially he drops him off at a truck stop and tells him to go be a person of pleasure in the restroom that has something to do with cutouts that are in the shape of a circle. And I won't go any further. But you're talking a high school kid, and it's
it's disturbing.
you don't find that in comic books anywhere that I can think of.
No, but the thing that it's the situations he's going through are super disturbing, but it's also like his facial expressions the whole time, just no emotion, no he just sort of.
Well, I mean, not only that, but it's not so much no emotion. He just seems so focused on his goal that he'll do anything to accomplish it. I mean, everything else is inconsequential. He needs to get to his goal and get to it. And
he believes that this woman in the well is somehow going to save him or make things better. So it's like nothing else really matters. I'll be renewed then. So what I've done in the past won't matter. I can kill these people. I just have to make sure I get there and do what she's asked and find the key for her.
So basically, the thing in the well has been telling to jump back to the house. So he's making his way across country. He kills the truck driver. He basically kills everybody on his bus. He kills the guy on the boat. He's closing in on the family. But then, so the thing in the well has been telling Bodhi that it's like an echo. And I don't know where the joke. Does anybody understand? It goes out because they bring it up a bunch of time. Bodhi keeps trying to get an answer to the joke, this who joke. The knock.
Well, didn't his father tell him that joke when he was younger?
I thought it was.
Or he overheard his father tell the joke, and he's trying to understand it, but
I thought it was one of the dreams that he had of his dad, one of the nightmares.
Yeah, it's in the dream. That's right.
He was playing on the floor of basically the mortuary, and the body bag that his father is in starts sits up, and his father is dead. Says who?
Yeah, who's there? And he's like, who? And then so he's trying to figure out the joke, and that's when he sort of figures out that the echo's not an echo, that it's something else. And I will tell you, because he's flicking he's talking to her again. He's flicking the flashlight on. And Tacoma talked earlier about the chills down your spine when you're reading something, when she was writing on the window. Dude, this panel, where he's getting yelled at, I'll be down in a minute, and it flashes back to her coming out of the well.
Hey, look real quick at that panel right above it. And you see him, I don't know who's calling out to him, but it's actually Bo D. So we kind of get
oh, yeah, it is
pronunciation right there. I just noticed it just now.
Yeah. So Kinsey's the one hollering at him because Kinsey's the one that's outside and gets
Got it. Yeah.
Later. But when her coming out of the well, I was just like, oh.
It had a lot of what was it? What was that movie where she came out of the TV that had that vibe?
Movie?
The Ring.
Poltergeist?
The Ring, yeah,
the Ring, yeah.
Hey, yeah, and actually she comes out of a well. Yeah. There it is.
Yeah, but that just her eyes and then the dark, the art on that page, that was just
creepy.
It got me. It was oh man. And then, Kinsey's talking to the cop, and then, interestingly enough, we've seen her down the well, and I do want to note this, and part of it probably has to be light, but she looks very, when he's, blue and, not really, purely human, but yet when she comes out, and maybe it's just the light or whatever, but she looks much more normal, and... I don't know. If maybe it was just
I mean, he drew her beautifully, right? I mean,
Right.
so I mean, like it's almost like God, I don't want it's not like a succubus or anything like that, but but something similar to like a beauty that you shouldn't reach for because it's evil kind of thing. I don't
Well,
know.
Yeah.
it's like the witch from Game of Thrones, right? The
But
Red Witch.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Melisandre, yeah.
Melisandre, yeah. I will say the other thing I noticed that
She
and
has
it
cat
could be just
eyes.
coincidence
Yeah,
because
I just saw that. Yeah.
of their faces, but I do feel like also like you wonder about the fact mom kind of looks like her
Yeah.
a little bit.
I'm looking at that right now. There are a lot of similarities like in these pages in these panels with the chick and Bodhi where like they have the kind of the same nose, lightweight, the same color eyes, maybe not so much the hair or ears, but yeah, I definitely see the resemblance between the mom.
Yeah, and I so and we'll get. I have a feeling we're gonna get more of the backstory, but like the dark hair, similar facial features. Part of that's just I think his style. That like all the faces look a little bit similar, but it does. I do wonder about that. Like if that isn't part of how Dad was attracted to Mom, was that Mom reminded him of this thing, even though he like tried to lock it away. There's, I don't know. There's something kind of creepy about that. So. But basically, she comes out and it's basically tells him that Sam's almost there, but he has to get her 2 keys, right?
Because she has to escape that area.
In order for her to get out of the well house, she needs 2 keys. Get the key and bring him. Well, I guess she only talking about. I guess she only tells Bodhi about the all key. But Sam's the one asking about the key to anywhere and the key to the black door. So there's 2 keys that she's actually after. But she doesn't actually tell Bodhi about that. But yeah. So we see meanwhile, while Bodhi's getting captured by the thing in the well, we see Sam arrive, knocks out Kinsey. He basically ambushes and locks Mom and Uncle Duncan in the cellar. Captures Ty, like
real quick,
wreaking havoc. Go ahead.
Sorry to jump in real quick. During that conversation she has with Bodhi, she mentions or he talks about his dad, and she says, "In a place called Once Upon a Time, your daddy would have done anything to make me happy." So it kind of tells of a history between his dad, and her.
Right. Well, she says that she wouldn't lie to him, and that, like, even though she kind of does, so you're not sure exactly what you can trust from her, but yeah, she gives that, and like, before the night is over, so will you.
Yeah, you're not sure if they had a history or if she just like manipulated it to the point where she had people doing her bidding.
Yeah,
it's left a little bit open there.
Well, she talks about how the dad is the reason she's locked away. That he made it where she couldn't find that key. And yeah, it's very interesting, like what you can trust of what she's telling him there versus what is complete BS.
Yeah.
Princess of Lies.
Yeah. Well,
I would assume if I was a dad and I was able to lock her away because she's dangerous, wouldn't you just destroy the key?
Maybe you can't. Maybe you tried and couldn't.
Yeah,
so,
maybe. Yeah.
So and also once you quote age out, the idea is that you forget about.
That's true. Yeah, you
everything
forget
that happened, which this whole sinister like thing. Maybe he did everything right, but now he just doesn't remember. He has little inklings of like memory, but not quite the whole thing.
Well, and I wonder about that because Duncan doesn't seem to really remember, and he talks about that the house that he remembers enough to know that the house chose Duncan. But when Sam is confronting him, like when we see that flashback to Sam confronting him about the key, like he makes a comment about, I don't know what you're talking about. Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. And to me, it struck me just the way he responds is that he does know, that he did remember at least some of it. like more so than maybe like clearly Duncan doesn't remember, but like he or thinks it was just a game, doesn't remember it being real. And I feel like maybe because Rendell locked it away and took the keys, that maybe he was able to remember more. I don't know that we'll get any explanation on that or if that's true or not. That was just my feeling that maybe he actually did remember more than what you should remember from this.
But he's dead now. So
yeah, so he's dead now for sure. So then we see like Bodhi trying to find the key. He realizes it's like his sister's bracelet. Meanwhile, like they basically try to set a trap for Sam and it kind of backfires. He figures it out. I don't know. Where do you guys? What part of this whole sequence here at the end do you guys want to talk about? Anybody have anything specific? Because there's a lot going on here in terms of, but it's mostly just a sequence of Sam trying to get the key. Meanwhile, this Echo, this thing in the well, is basically just using his as a distraction, so that Echo doesn't believe he'll get the key and uses Bodhi to get the key.
Yeah, there's a lot of cat and mouse.
Right?
Yeah, a lot of that. But I mean, it's still. I mean, there's a bunch of pages where there's just very little to no dialogue, right? And well, actually, now that I'm flipping through, there actually is a lot of dialogue. But either way, there's still a lot going on. But you do get to see Ty go through one of the doors and turn into a ghost himself.
Yeah,
kind of makes him like, oh crap, Bodhi was telling the truth.
Yeah, he realizes that his brother was not like. Well, Sam's trying to kill him, and he actually causes him to go through the door.
Yeah, and that he thinks that he killed him that way, but obviously, well, it flashes to the point where Bodhi brings the bracelet to Dad's old girlfriend, right?
Right. So here's my question about that. Did he? Oh, okay. It does show him come back, and he leaves the key in the lock when he comes back to get the bracelet. Okay, I was like, why isn't his body there if the door was open? And it's because he actually left the key. Is why that happens with Ty. Okay.
Yeah.
Like that part it confused me a little bit the first time. But yeah, we see Ty kind of go back to his body. After Sam thinks he's dead, we get another confrontation between them. But it is interesting that, like, so she promised, one of the things she promised Bodhi was that she would stop him and wouldn't let him hurt his family anymore. And he's like, remember you promised. Like, she leaves and he thinks she doesn't, but she sort of does, because she basically stops him, like, before she goes and does whatever she wants. But also says she's going to use him some more. Like, she breaks his neck and then pushes him through the dead door, so he becomes a ghost.
So just before that, though, a bit of character development that I like here is just that, again, Nina Locke is locked in the basement in the wine cellars, right? There's no subtlety here, yet she clearly concocts a plan to get Ty to go to the bedroom. Ty knows where the gun is. They mentioned that earlier. And so, even though she's using alcohol as a crutch to get through her PTSD, when it comes down to it, she is strong on, like, I'm going to defend the family. Here's the plan. Do it. You go now. I've got it under control. Even, Duncan is sitting here. I'm sorry, my lighting is so bad. And he's like, what are you doing? She's like, quiet. I got it. It's like
motherly instincts kicking in.
Right.
It is. It also gives you this slight feeling that Duncan was chosen because he's inept. He's not the type to remember everything and make a stupid mistake trying to fix it all by, doing something with the keys. He's just like, oh, we used to play a game around here. Nina, what are you doing? We should be quiet. He's got a gun. And she's like, this is what we're doing. So there's almost a bit of like, he's the inept one. And maybe that's why he's the one who is in charge.
Yeah, I think so. Like, he was less likely to remember. He was less likely to believe what he did remember, and it's part of the reason maybe the house chose him. Um, so once the end result is basically Bodhi realizes that the bracelet Kinsey's been wearing that their dad gave her is the key. He takes it to the creature. Meanwhile, Ty and Kinsey basically figure out a way. Kinsey gets the gun. Like, they basically figure out a way to get away from him. But in the meantime, this thing has got what it wants. And it's able to use the key to escape. But it also clearly has, like, an additional key?
It has the key where you could she can change genders, right? So she changes into a dude, which is I think what the picture was we saw earlier, right?
Right.
Um
Yeah, we see this secondary key, which is clearly like got the gender symbols on it.
Oh, I did not pick up on that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the symbol for Janus, the Roman god that they got January from. It's looking backwards and looking forwards, but this is just, male, female.
Yeah. Well, it has the male and female symbols. Like, so it clearly has a secondary key and goes to a specific room, as Andy talked about.
You know what? Yeah, we talked about
in a very specific door.
Yeah, that's like the closet door, which, by the way, I like how they had the 30 Days of Night poster and the Niner poster. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
30 Days of Night book, though, was terrible. Don't ever read it if you haven't read it. But yeah, that was pretty. It does answer the question. She has to get to a specific type of door with that key.
At least with this key, it's another.
At least with this key, yes.
Yeah, that uses one door, whereas like the Anywhere key clearly seems to be able to use any door, but this specific key appears to be using this one location to basically and change it. Disappears into the closet, comes back out as a man.
But it's not the same room and same location.
It's not.
No, it's not.
It's a different room, different location, different gender.
So
different...
I think some keys will transport you somewhere for whatever it is that key is meant to do for it to work.
Oh, so she goes into Kinsey's room and comes out of Ty's room.
Yep.
I didn't even register that. So I noticed the key, but I did not register that she went into Kinsey's closet and came out of Ty's closet. That's interesting.
I think the two are separate incidents. I think the Anywhere key and the gender key, they're just used like simultaneously here. I don't think it's that she had to go from one closet to another to use the gender key.
Well, she clearly goes to a very specific door that's in the back of this closet to use the gender key.
It looks like a safe almost.
It's almost like a safe. Yeah. And then when she reemerges, she emerges in a different room through a different closet. So she goes into, because she's a girl, to me, I read that as maybe this door would have been in any girl's closet. Like, because she has the key.
No, maybe she had to go into a girl's closet to come out of a boy's room.
Yeah, like I almost feel like that's what's going on. That like because she has that key, she could have went into any female's closet and would have come out of any male's closet, like a male closet.
Because if you notice, there's no door in his room. There's just a closet, and it doesn't show her coming out of a door. It shows her coming out of thin air.
Yeah,
just materializing.
Yeah,
with an iPod click wheel on the bed, which is really very cool.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
I forgot about those.
Very cool.
There is so much to this that we're just scratching the surface on. I can't wait.
I feel like because we're trying to give it a linear narrative, and so much of this is like side by side stories that all get to the same point. I'm not sure that we're even doing the viewers justice on how well this, like the different kids' storylines line up together to bring you to a point. Right. That's really kind of like the majesty of this is like Bode going through a whole issue of a comic as a ghost and telling people different things and picking up little bits and dropping little hints. And then Tyler becomes a ghost and all of a sudden it fits what Bodhi was saying. And it all kind of leads to a point. It's so masterfully done.
Yeah. So kind of the final big reveal like here is that like after turns into a dude, goes to find Sam, and basically, like I said, breaks his neck and shoves him through the death door, so he becomes a ghost, and it's like, oh, don't worry, I'm not done with you. I still need you, Sam. It's just I need you so much isn't what you need, what you always wanted, someone to need you, and and don't forget it. So like, and we see like at the end, like Sam, like when they're closing the door after the cops leave, you see like his little ghost there watching them.
Yeah, where did the body go?
Well, it went through the magic door.
Well, after that, after the cops are there, did the cops? There's so many questions I have about this. Where his ghost is there with the house,
yeah,
but his body's not there after the cops leave.
Well, to me, like what I took that is because the door is a magical door. You use that specific key to open it to go through and become a ghost. But she doesn't leave the body, like where Bodhi and Ty were leaving their body on that side of the door.
The door's always open when they go.
The door is always open, and she locks it behind him, so he can't come back through the door. So the body's in like whatever this mystic.
Unless he has a key, maybe
he's part of the house now.
Yeah,
unless he gets the key somehow.
Unless somebody opens that door again with the key. And pulls his, I assume his body's just going to be laying on the side of the door if you use that specific key on it.
Oh, good point.
Tacoma's sitting there just like you guys are just have no idea.
Well, I mean, part of it I forget because it's been a while, probably a couple of years since I read it. So little bits I'm like, oh, I know, and other bits I'm like, oh, I can't quite remember. That's a good question.
But the other thing that like we see, the other big reveal is he appears at the running coach's house, and we get the comment of, I mean, I killed your mother for you. It's the least you could do, really. Like, so we see that the people in the photo here, we see them coming, that they may all know or may all be a part of this story at some point, at least, which is my guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we see like the person that he's got his arm around, like in this, is actually that running coach.
Oh.
So yeah. So there's clearly there, and then he's bold enough to show up and make friends with Ty. So
and
clearly
check out Bodhi side-eyeing him there.
Oh my gosh, Bodhi is like not like knows something is off.
You look familiar.
Yes. Bodhi knows super familiar, but then the last thing we see of this volume is Bodhi finding another key. Which we don't have a clue what that one does, but
all these keys look pretty cool. If you see like the little spiral,
the spiral of all the possible keys.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just go full screen.
Don't go to Wikipedia because it lists the list of keys is daunting.
Oh, is it really?
Oh yeah.
They kind of there's I can't think of when you go 2, 4, 8, 16 instead of 2, 4, 6, 8. When things multiply by multiples, it just they seem to slowly show a few, and then they show more and more, and then in some of like the books after the original 6 volumes, they really just pile on the keys. But
so so far, like you see, like at the beginning of this image, you see the 4 keys we've seen so far, including the one Bodhi just found, but you see that there's tons more keys.
Yeah,
is really what they're hinting at here. And yeah.
So there was a time when my son and I had them memorized. Like, you could probably name half the keys in the spiral. But
oh, geez,
wow!
I'm a weird father. This is when he was like 7 or 8. But
Andy looks confused.
And then I'm assuming that center key, I mean, has the omega symbol on top. I'm assuming that means that's the all key, the thing that could do anything. The key that could do everything.
The all key is the one we see right off.
Okay, well, the big key in the middle then.
No, that is the omega key, because that's the very last volume is called Omega.
Got it. Okay, so that makes sense. All right.
Which is probably the same thing as the black key or whatever, or the key to the black door that she's looking for or something.
No, she. So you've got the gender key, the anywhere key, the ghost key, and the first one you see is the new one, which is called the head key, I think.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm not sure which one she was referencing that she was looking for. Whether
Well, this said key to the black door or something is what Sam was saying that he was supposed to bring her. So.
Oh, okay. I know what that is. Okay.
Okay. So, all right. So we went over an hour on this. Like you said, yeah, it's such well, like it weaves together so well. It's hard to really talk about because it's flashing between each of the kids, and it's flashing between Sam, and it's flashing between this ghost thing that's now calling itself Zach. So what do you got? What did you guys final thoughts? You guys have anything you want to talk about before we get to final thoughts on this volume? All right, Mike, final thoughts on this volume.
I think it was good. It intrigued me. I'll get the second volume for sure, and I'll be happy to join again, obviously. And I'm hesitating calling it part of like a top 5, top 10 for me at the moment. I'll wait until I get the rest of the issues and volumes before I make that last determination. I've done that a few times and ended up regretting it. So it's so far it's very well written, very well drawn, and I'm loving the characters and the character development so far.
Nice. Andy, what about you?
I'm with Mike. I hesitate to say this hits a top list just yet before we get into the second or the third volume, but this has potential to be in. This currently has potential to be in my top 5 at the rate this is going. This was a very, very, very fun surprise. I had no expectations going into this. In fact, I didn't think this was really going to be in my realm of reads, to be honest with you. And I was pleasantly surprised. This delivered. This first volume is a 10 out of 10 and should be on everybody's list of something to read when they're first starting out in comic books, much like Saga or The Walking Dead, or you name a couple other ones. Locke and Key needs to be right on there as well.
Tacoma, what are your thoughts on this volume? Obviously, you know more than us.
It's not very good. No, I agree with Andy. I mean, I think I would like a lot of creators to make sure that they read this, right? No, this is how you tell a story. This is how you use the art to convey these things. This is how the comics move without lots and lots of exposition. You don't have to have tons of words if you're doing it right. If your artist is as much a creator as your writer and you're really telling the story together. This is really, it is one of my top ones. I don't know if it's my favorite volume of the whole series, but it's certainly up there. And I mean, the artwork from this first half of the first issue was just phenomenal. And just struck me so much as like, this is the way to do comic book storytelling,
Yeah. I will say, like, just the artwork comment is like, I do think the artwork, what I like about the most is how it helps tell the story. Like, it's not necessarily like my favorite style of art or anything, but I do think it really helps tell the story. I think the way he sets up the panels are amazing. For me, I'm hooked. Like, I didn't know what to expect going into this. This is not something I typically, like, the type of story I typically gravitate toward. But there was enough suspense here. There was some horror, there was some violence, which is fine, but really it was enough. And I'm really intrigued, the concept of the keys, the concept of the house, what this thing that lived in the well really is, what its agenda is. I really like the characters. I like the kids. The mom is a strong character despite everything she's been through. And, yeah, I'm hooked. I want to see where this goes. So
it's what makes Saga so good, right? It's a family story.
Yeah.
Saga was so terrible.
Saga.
Son of a...
Can't wait for issue 55.
Oh yeah. I've been waiting on that.
2027, I think, is when they said that was coming out.
Sweet. I moved it up, huh? Moved it up.
I'm gonna get the next George R. Martin novel before I get to
Yeah, I think we're definitely getting Winds of Winter before we get Saga. So, and he's got nothing to say to that. Well, I want to thank everybody that hung out with us tonight. I want to thank this panel. This was awesome. I appreciate you guys hanging out, reading, talking comics with me. We will definitely be back with volumes 2 and 3 at some point, hopefully not too long in the future. And we will catch you next time.
I'm already reading volume 2.